The internet has been in complete chaos over the past few days, and at the center of it all is yet another shocking twist in the ever-expanding case surrounding Sean Diddy Combs. Just when it seemed like there couldn't possibly be another jaw-dropping revelation, adult film performer Sly Diggler stepped forward and detonated what many are calling one of the biggest bombs yet. According to Sly, he is in possession of actual video footage allegedly showing Diddy in an intimate situation with the mother of 50 Cent's child, footage that was reportedly meant to appear in a high-profile Netflix documentary but was quietly removed before release. This single claim has completely reframed the public's understanding of why 50 Cent has spent years relentlessly targeting Diddy with insults, accusations, and calculated public pressure. What once looked like exaggerated trolling or long-standing industry beef now appears far more personal, far more calculated, and far more explosive. For years, fans and observers questioned why 50 Cent's hostility toward Diddy seemed to go beyond standard hip-hop rivalry. While 50 himself once joked that the tension started over something as trivial as a shopping invitation, that explanation never fully satisfied anyone paying close attention. The animosity was too intense, too persistent, and too emotionally charged. Now, with Sly Diggler's claims entering the conversation, the pieces are starting to fall into place. According to Sly, this alleged footage was not just gossip or hearsay. It was real enough that it was once considered for inclusion in a major streaming documentary tied to the Diddy investigation. However, the footage was ultimately removed, allegedly because it involved 50 Cent's child's mother, a line even he was unwilling to cross publicly. That decision, if true, adds a layer of complexity to 50's role in the broader narrative. A man torn between exposing wrongdoing and protecting his child from irreversible public fallout. Sly Diggler did not make these claims in a vacuum. He laid them out during a sit-down interview with DJ Vlad, a platform known for hosting controversial figures and eliciting headline-making statements. During that interview, Sly didn't just criticize Diddy. He went after 50 Cent as well, accusing him of selectively censoring material that hit too close to home. According to Sly, the decision to remove the footage had nothing to do with journalistic integrity or legal concerns and everything to do with personal embarrassment and family protection. Whether people agree with that assessment or not, the implication alone has sent shockwaves through social media. It suggests that what the public has seen so far may only be a fraction of what actually exists behind the scenes. What makes this revelation even more unsettling is the timing. These claims are emerging while public scrutiny around Diddy is already at an all-time high, with lawsuits, testimonies, and leaked materials painting an increasingly disturbing picture of his private life. Sly's story doesn't exist in isolation. It slots neatly into a growing pattern of allegations involving power, control, and exploitation. And when you factor in that the woman at the center of this controversy is widely believed to be Daphne Joy, the implications become even more serious. Daphne Joy isn't just a random name pulled from obscurity. She is directly connected to one of hip-hop's most influential figures and is the mother of a child who will one day be old enough to see all of this unfold online. Adding another layer of intrigue is the reported connection to Netflix. The idea that such footage was once considered acceptable for a globally distributed documentary, only to be removed at the last moment, raises major questions. Who made that decision? How much influence did 50 Cent actually have over the final cut? And perhaps most importantly, what else was left on the cutting room floor? In an era where streaming documentaries often promise the full truth, the possibility that crucial material was deliberately withheld has left viewers wondering whether they were given an honest account or a carefully curated version of events. As the story continues to spiral, one thing is already clear: this isn't just celebrity gossip anymore. This is about power dynamics, personal vendettas, and the uncomfortable reality that some of the most public feuds in entertainment are rooted in deeply private betrayals. Sly Diggler's claims may still be contested, debated, or legally challenged, but they have already succeeded in doing one thing: forcing people to re-evaluate everything they thought they understood about the Diddy and 50 Cent conflict. What once looked like petty animosity now resembles the fallout from a deeply personal war, one that has been quietly simmering for years and is only now beginning to boil over into public view. To understand how this situation spiraled to this point, it's critical to unpack the testimony that ignited everything and the woman at the center of it. During the legal proceedings involving Sean Diddy Combs, a woman identified in court only as Jane Doe took the stand and delivered testimony that stunned nearly everyone following the case. While her name was initially withheld, online sleuths and later court filings pointed to Daphne Joy, the mother of 50 Cent's son. According to her testimony, she first crossed paths with Diddy during a girls' trip to Miami around 2020. At the time, one of her friends was involved with him, but once his attention shifted toward Jane Doe, the dynamic changed. She described initial hesitation, saying she declined his advances at first, only agreeing to see him later after her friend stepped aside. What followed, she claimed, was a relationship that gradually evolved into something far more transactional and coercive, blurring the lines between dating, financial dependency, and control. Jane Doe testified that beginning in 2021, she entered into an arrangement where Diddy allegedly paid her living expenses, including a reported $10,000 per month, in exchange for her continued availability. Over time, she claimed, the relationship escalated into a pattern of orchestrated encounters where she felt pressured to comply in order to maintain financial stability. Her testimony painted a picture of imbalance, one where money, influence, and fear of losing her lifestyle kept her locked into a situation she said she repeatedly tried to escape. Text messages presented in court allegedly showed her asking to stop, expressing exhaustion and distress, only to be reminded, implicitly or directly, of what she stood to lose. The court heard claims that these encounters were not isolated incidents but ongoing, structured events that lasted hours at a time and were planned in advance, reinforcing the idea that this was not a spontaneous personal relationship but a controlled environment dictated by Diddy's demands. This is where Sly Diggler enters the narrative. According to Sly, his involvement began when he received a direct message from Jane Doe in 2021. At the time, he was gaining traction in his own industry and thought little of the message at first, letting it sit unanswered for days. Once contact was made, however, things escalated rapidly. Sly has claimed that their initial interaction quickly moved to a private video call, during which he noticed something unusual: Jane Doe repeatedly glancing off camera, as though someone else was present. That detail would later take on far greater significance. Eventually, Sly says he was invited to meet in person, only to arrive and find that Diddy himself was there, observing and directing the situation rather than participating in a conventional sense. Sly has consistently described Diddy's role not as a passive bystander but as someone exerting control, issuing instructions, and shaping how everything unfolded. Before anything occurred, Sly alleges he was required to sign a non-disclosure agreement, signaling that secrecy was paramount. What shocked many viewers of his interview was Sly's claim that he unintentionally recorded parts of one encounter on his phone, capturing brief footage in which Diddy could allegedly be seen walking through the frame. That accidental recording, Sly insists, is the same material he believes was once destined for inclusion in a Netflix documentary tied to the broader investigation. Whether or not that footage will ever be publicly verified, its mere existence has fueled speculation about how much documentation exists behind closed doors, and how much power those recordings might represent. As Sly laid out his story publicly, the narrative around Jane Doe became even more divisive. Some view her primarily as a victim caught in a web of manipulation, while others argue she made calculated choices driven by financial incentives. That debate has only intensified the scrutiny on 50 Cent, who has publicly stated that he was aware of what was happening long before the trial and deliberately chose not to spotlight it in his documentary. The second paragraph of this story doesn't just introduce more characters. It exposes the uncomfortable gray area between consent, coercion, money, and revenge. And as the testimony, interviews, and alleged recordings continue to surface, one thing becomes increasingly clear: this was never just a private scandal. It was a collision of power, pride, and personal history that was bound to explode into the public eye sooner or later. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, everything about this situation starts to feel far less random and far more intentional. According to Sly Diggler, Diddy's decision to get involved with the mother of 50 Cent's child wasn't coincidence, lust, or opportunity, it was strategy. Out of the countless women with access to Diddy's world, Sly argues that choosing 50's baby mother was a calculated power move rooted in long-standing animosity. In his view, this wasn't just about private behavior, it was about dominance, humiliation, and leverage. Sly even suggested that Diddy had a habit of recording encounters, not simply for personal use, but as a form of insurance, material that could be weaponized if relationships soured or rivalries escalated. If true, that detail alone reframes the entire saga as something far darker than scandalous gossip. It suggests a chessboard mentality, where people were reduced to pieces in a personal war that had been brewing for years beneath the surface of the music industry. That context also sheds new light on why 50 Cent has been so relentless, so unapologetic, and so publicly vicious in his campaign against Sean, Diddy, Combs. This wasn't just about ego or industry politics, it was about betrayal at the deepest level. For years, 50 was dismissed as a troll, someone using humor and provocation to stay relevant. But now, with testimony, leaked audio, and insider interviews surfacing, it appears he may have known far more than he ever let on. His decision to exclude certain names and footage from the documentary suddenly feels less like bias and more like restraint. Protecting a child from seeing their mother publicly dissected may have outweighed the desire to expose every ugly truth, even if that meant allowing critics to accuse him of selective storytelling. What makes this story especially disturbing is how many people seem to have known pieces of it while remaining silent. Former insiders, bodyguards, and associates have all hinted that this behavior wasn't hidden. It was normalized within certain circles. Payments, arrangements, and secrecy were allegedly routine, not exceptions. And when court documents finally surfaced naming individuals outright, the public reaction was explosive, validating suspicions that had once been dismissed as conspiracy or bitterness. In that moment, 50's long-standing claims no longer sounded unhinged, they sounded prophetic. The narrative flipped almost overnight, transforming him from instigator to someone who may have been warning people all along, even if his delivery was harsh and unapologetic. At its core, this entire saga forces an uncomfortable conversation about power, accountability, and the cost of silence. It raises questions about how many stories never make it into documentaries, how many truths are buried to protect reputations, and how often children become collateral damage in adult wars fueled by ego and revenge. Whether more footage emerges or not, the damage has already been done. Relationships have been exposed, alliances shattered, and reputations permanently altered. And judging by how quickly new details continue to surface, it's hard to believe this is the final chapter. So now the question turns to you. Do you think there's more evidence still being kept out of the public eye? Do you believe 50 Cent will ever release uncensored material, or will protecting his son always come first? And most importantly, how much of what we see in celebrity documentaries is the full truth, and how much is carefully edited damage control? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is far from over. If you made it this far, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay locked in, because as this case continues to unfold, you can be sure there's more coming, and you won't want to miss what drops next. Over the past several days, the internet has been in absolute turmoil as new allegations connected to Sean Diddy Combs continue to surface, but this time the claims are far more explosive than online rumors or anonymous blinds. Adult film performer Sly Diggler has publicly alleged that he possesses real video footage showing Diddy involved with the mother of 50 Cent's child, and perhaps even more shocking, this footage was reportedly considered for inclusion in a Netflix documentary before being quietly removed. This revelation has caused many people to reassess the long-standing and unusually personal hostility between 50 Cent and Diddy, a feud that for years appeared excessive, obsessive, and far deeper than typical industry rivalry. While 50 once joked that the tension began over something as trivial as a shopping invitation, that explanation never aligned with the level of aggression he consistently directed toward Diddy, and now, with these claims in the open, the animosity appears rooted in something far more personal and painful. According to Sly Diggler, Diddy's involvement with 50's child's mother was not accidental or driven by chance, but rather a calculated power move, an act motivated by dominance, control, and long-standing resentment. That context becomes even more disturbing when placed alongside courtroom testimony from a woman initially identified as Jane Doe, later widely reported to be Daphne Joy, who described a multi-year arrangement in which financial support, housing, and lifestyle were allegedly exchanged for her availability. Her testimony painted a picture of a relationship that evolved from dating into something transactional and coercive, marked by power imbalance and financial dependence. It was during this same period that Sly Diggler claims he was contacted directly, first through social media and later through private video calls, eventually being invited to in-person encounters where he alleges Diddy was present, observing and directing events rather than participating in a conventional sense. Sly further claims that non-disclosure agreements were standard, secrecy was enforced, and that one encounter was accidentally recorded, briefly capturing Diddy in the frame, footage Sly believes is the same material once considered for the documentary. This alleged decision to remove the footage places 50 Cent in a far more complicated position than critics initially assumed, suggesting his choice may not have been about protecting Diddy, but about shielding his child from lifelong public consequences. Publicly, 50 has stated that Jane Doe was not a victim and that he was aware of the arrangement long before the trial, yet he still chose not to place her or the footage at the center of his documentary, drawing a line between exposing wrongdoing and protecting his family. As more insiders, former associates, and court documents come forward, it has become increasingly difficult to dismiss these stories as exaggerations or vendettas, especially as names and financial records begin to corroborate claims that once seemed unbelievable. What remains most troubling is how normalized this behavior appears to have been within powerful circles, how many people allegedly knew and stayed silent, and how long it took for any of it to reach public scrutiny. Now the question is no longer whether something happened, but how much evidence still remains hidden, how many recordings have never surfaced, and whether the full truth will ever be made public. So what do you think? Will more footage eventually come out, or will certain lines never be crossed in order to protect children and reputations? Was this feud always personal, and are we only now seeing the real reasons behind it? Let your thoughts be known in the comments. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because as this case continues to unfold, it's becoming increasingly clear that this story is far from over.